Now, what I'd like to talk about is what I call the 10 most dangerous things people say about stocks. Here's a good one. If it's gone down this much already, it can't go any lower. I remember when Polaroid went from 140 to about 107, and people said, if you ever get Polaroid under 100, you got to buy it. You just back up the truck, buy the stock. Stock could get to 110, then rally, fall 103, go 112, go 105. They said, gets under 100, buy Polaroid. Polaroid broke 100, people started buying it, and within 9 months, the stock was 18. I saw the same thing with Avon Products. So just saying, it's gone down this far, how much lower? I mean, it's crazy, but, it can keep going. In fact, I tried this out. Kaiser Industries, I was a new analyst at Fidelity, and we were about to buy the biggest block ever at Kaiser Industries. The stock had gone from 29 to 17. We're about to buy the largest block ever in the history of the American Stock Exchange. We bought, 10 or 15 million shares. At 15 3/4, I said, my God, the stock's gone from 29 to 17. How much lower can it go? So we bought this enormous block at 15 3/4. So I called my mother and I said, Mom, I guess stock at Kaiser Industries, it's 10. So about 3 months later, I said, you ought to buy this. It's gone from 29 to 10. How much lower can it go? Well, it went to 9, it went to 8, it went to 7, it went to 6, it went to 5, it went to 4. Now, fortunately for me, this happened very rapidly, or I'd be working at the Stop and Shop bag and behind the lines instead of Fidelity. So fortunately, this was compressed in only about 6 months. So I had to go to the fund manager and say, I was a little bit early on this at 15 3/4, we call this premature in the business. Had a correction, which is a euphemism for losing a lot of money rapidly. So I said, let's check this again. The stock's 4. They own 45% of Kaiser Aluminum. They own 59% of Kaiser Steel. They own 38% of Kaiser Cement. They own all of Kaiser Electronics, all of Kaiser Broadcasting, which had 7 TV sets. They own Jeep. They had Kaiser Fiberglass. I said about Kaiser Sand and Gravel. They had a bunch of other Kaisers, and they had no debt. Now, in this room, because I know Freeman Billings is very interested in financial stocks, no one's ever gone bankrupt without any debt. Now, that would take I think you have to give some kind of distinguished service award to somebody who did that. But they had no debt, and I said, it's not going to go to 0. I was wrong when I said it can't go below 15. So we hung on, and within 3 years, they gave out the shares in Kaiser Steel, gave out the shares in Kaiser Cement, gave out the shares in Kaiser Steel and Aluminum, and they sold off all the businesses. You got about $55 a share. But if you didn't know the story, and the stock went from 15 to 11, and you're just saying how much lower can it go, when it went to 9, went to 8, you would have gone. So you can't just say it can't go any lower, because I saw Taco Bell go from 14 to 1 in 1974, and they had no debt and making 60 cents a share. There's a corollary to that that's even more dangerous. If it's gone this high already, how can it possibly go lower? Higher, sorry. Philip Morris, adjusted for splits, sold for 12 cents in 1951. And then it goes to 60 cents in 1961. So it goes up 5-fold, and you say to yourself, how much, this never sold for that, but just for splits, you say, how much higher can this go? It's gone up 5-fold. They missed the power of Marlboro. They missed there's 220 countries in the world. They missed the cash flow of the company. They missed everything. This stock was a 100-bagger after going up 5-fold. But people sold it just saying, how much higher can it go? Can't go any higher. They did the same at Home Depot. They did the same with Toys R Us. I did the same thing with Toys R Us. Just saying it can't go any higher, it's gone this much already, that's very dangerous, and don't use that one. And it's a very bad thing to do. Eventually, they always come back. Here's another one that sucks. That's a technical stock market term we just use only in the stock market. The RCA just about got back to its 1929 price, was backed out by GE. Manville never came back. International Harvester, even with its name changed and adjusted for splits, hasn't got all the way back yet. Western Union, double knits, remember those wonderful things, floppy disks? They don't have to come back, but they say eventually they always come back. Not true. Here's a great one. It's $3. How much can I lose? This is a great one. Because get out. I don't have a computer and I can't do high-level math, but just do this one. Let's say your neighbor buys $10,000 of a stock at 50, and the stock's now 3, and you put $25,000 in at 3. If it goes to 0, who loses the most? A lot of people cannot answer this question. I mean, if you put $1 billion in at 3, you can lose $1 billion. I mean, they blow taps on lots of companies every year. You know, you just have, they can go to zero. Here's a good one that helped me a lot. It's always darkest before the dawn. This business is terrible. It's awful. You ought to buy the group. This is not a good way of making money. Here's one you're probably talking about before lunch, freight car deliveries. In 1979, there was 96,000 freight cars delivered in the United States. 2 years later, it fell to 45,000, the lowest in 23 years. So it goes from 96,000 to 45,000. People say business is awful, it's horrible, pathetic. Then it falls to 25,000. They say, just load up. There's about 15 opportunities to lose money here. There's about 15 suppliers of freight cars, 15 manufacturers. Business was awful. Well, last year we shipped 7,000 freight cars in the United States. The business just continued to be miserable. And I'll give you one there's even greater opportunity to lose money on. Energy services industry. This, we all had a great opportunity to get our heads handed to us. In 1982, there was 11,000 of those oil rigs drilling those holes all over Oklahoma and Texas and Colorado. We used to have the rig count every week. And the rig count fell from 11,000 in 82 to 6,000 in 83. Then fell a little bit lower in 84. And there's hundreds and hundreds of companies here. Companies that made the muds and did the downhole stuff, the fracturing companies, the well companies, all the measurement companies, the Schlumbergers, the bid companies. Lots of opportunities to lose money here. There's an equal opportunity here for serious losses. And the people said, listen, the business is terrible, let's buy these groups. Well, the rig count was only 1,000 3 years ago. So it went from 11,000 to 6,000 to 5,000, then 8 years later it was under 1,000. The industry really started to turn about 2 years ago. So just saying the business can't get worse. I was lucky enough, in addition to having the metals industry in Star Fidelity, I had the textile industry, which is a great group to follow, because you follow companies like J.P. Stevens, was founded in the 18th century, and West Point Pepperell was founded in the 18th century. Burlington Industries was one of the new companies that was founded in 1904. These people have been through recessions, depressions, world wars. They've seen it all. And there's a great expression in the textile industry. It's always darkest before pitch black. Now that's a good one to remember, because when business is terrible, it can get considerably terrible. It can get terrible to the power of 6. And I love those numbers on freight car deliveries. You ever watch, I love the show Jeopardy. You ever watch Jeopardy and people come out, they will know those numbers. Remember, they'll know the numbers. And they'll know, you know, what country Box took his first vacation in, and they'll know Phil Rizzuto's batting average and what his wife's first name was, and they'll know the stock symbols of Xerox before it was Haloid, or, you know, they know everything. And you watch the show, and you feel like an absolute idiot watching the show, because they answer all these questions. But they're really smart. I've owned this stock before, King World. Right after it, they show Wheel of Fortune. And what happens is they'll have this word up there, and it'll be TH, and there's a T, and it's, I buy a vowel here, I buy a U, you know, buy an I, and you know, Vanna spins the wheel, and they buy the A, and, you know, you're redeemed by watching the Wheel of Fortune after feeling like an absolute jerk on the Jeopardy game, and it's really smart. When I rebound to 10, I'll sell. Here's a great rule. Somebody buys a stock at 10, and it falls to 6. They say, if it gets back to 10, I'll sell. Now, I think the math, 4 and 6, I can handle this level math. I think that's about a 66% return. You ought to buy it. If you think it's going back to 10, you ought to buy the hell out of the damn thing. But they think if it gets back to 10, I'll sell. Now, what you ought to do is never put down a round number, because I think for the next 26 years, this stock will go between 5 and 9 and a quarter. It'll never get to 10. So maybe put 9 and 1/8 or 8 and 3/4. But just saying the stock, if it gets back what I paid for it, this is a very important rule. This is one of the key rules. The stock doesn't know you own it. Remember that. You could be a miserable person. You could have, you know, never helped anybody, never done anything right, had 67 spouses, never done anything right. If you own Coca-Cola the last 50 years, it's gone up 300-fold. You could be the greatest human in the world, help Special Olympics, help the mentally challenged, help poor people, help AIDS people. If you own Bethlehem Steel, it's lower than it was 30 years ago. It's not your fault. Don't take this personal, you know. But people treat stocks sometimes like their grandchildren or a puppy. I mean, they think the stock knows who you are. You know, it's, you know, it doesn't work that way. Let me worry. I own conservative stocks. I don't have to worry. I own conservative stocks. I remember when Con Ed fell 80%, then tripled. Public Service Indiana went down 90%. Gulf States Utilities, Long Island Lighting. This may be an oxymoron. We had Quality Texas Banks that went to zero. We had Quality New England Banks that went to zero. These were companies that have been around for 150 years, 120 years. Saying I own conservative stocks, I don't have to worry. I've seen a lot of people, they'll inherit a stock from somebody. They'll say, you know, my mother said on her deathbed, don't sell the Long Island Lighting. You know, you always wondered, you know, she's going to heaven, or hopefully where she's going to heaven. You know, they talk about a Little League game or a vacation or a game of hearts they had, or imagine talking on your deathbed about Long Island Lighting. And you say, well, you know, but you get these stories all the time. And I think your mother would have noticed, she wouldn't have sold at 29, but she would have noticed they had this little plant that was about $6 billion over budget, no one wanted it, and wasn't working, and Long Island stopped growing. So maybe she would have turfed it at 22 or got out at 18. She wouldn't have let it go to 4. You know, so just because you inherit some stock and it's so-called conservative, like Eastman Kodak fell 75%, IBM fell 75%, don't tell anybody you own a conservative stock. Companies are very dynamic. I don't buy that argument. Here's a very dangerous one. Look at all the money I've lost. I didn't buy it. People do this all the time. They say, I didn't own Blockbuster, I didn't own Home Depot, I didn't own Toys R Us. Eric, it was very nice to say some nice things about when I came up here, and Manny has been nice to me. I literally, one of my books listed on 2 pages, in the 13 years I ran Magellan, I listed, I think about 200 stocks, A through L, on the New York Stock Exchange. They went up tenfold or more that I didn't own while I ran Magellan. I had owned lots of stocks. I listed 200 stocks A through L. I stopped at the letter L, and I didn't own any of these shares. They went up tenfold or more, and I was able to do okay with Magellan. And people worry all the time about missing Microsoft, missing Western Digital, missing United Airlines. They spend all their time worrying about stocks they miss. You cannot lose money in a stock you don't own. That's a very important. The only way to lose money is buy a stock, have it go down, and sell it. That's the only way. And I swear that people, their spouse has to cut out the newspaper in the morning, cut out the C's, and the person will look at the Amazon. Oh my God, Microsoft's up 3. You know, I was going to buy 1,000 shares of Microsoft. I lost 3,000 of Microsoft last night while I was sleeping. You know, I was going to buy 7,000 shares of National Semiconductor at 10. It's now 17. I just lost $49,000 on National Semiconductor. They do this all the time. I mean, they have to cut holes. Thank God Blockbuster finally went away, because that was early in the alphabet. People would always be looking how much they lost on Blockbuster. I missed that one. I'll catch the next one. That usually does not work. Toys R Us, there was a lot of copycats of Toys R Us. There was Child World, there was Lionel, there was copycats of Home Depot. Buying the next of something usually doesn't work. It's very bad. It's like buying on dips. I think it's always better to buy from dips. I always thought it was a better rule than buy on dips. You may have to explain this to some other people. This is another technical term you may have to explain after hours what a dip is. I usually refer to it as plurals, dips. I never heard dip. You know, he's a dip, she's a dip. They're usually only the plural tense for it. And it's a gender non-specific. It's usually plural. Dip is never used. Stock has gone up, I must be right. Stock has gone down, I must be wrong. I'm convinced that people do this all the time. They buy stock at 10, they buy a little bit of it, it goes to 13. They now say they don't know anything more about it than they knew when they bought it at 10. They have no idea what this company does, but it's gone to 13. Now they take a second mortgage in their house and buy it at 13. The best thing that could happen for us is to go directly from 10 to 4 for these folks. You know. It's going to go to 4 eventually, but it goes to 13 in the middle. They're convinced now, they bought 100 shares at 10, now they buy 20,000 at 13. And all the fact is the stock went from 10 to 13 is it went up. The average movement of a stock on the New York Stock Exchange this century, between its high and its low, has been 50%. The average stock on the New York Stock Exchange. That means the stock started the year 20, sometime during the year sold 16, sometime during the year sold at 24, might have finished the year 21, might have finished the year 19. The average range of a stock on the New York Stock Exchange is 50% in 12 months, between its high and its low. So stocks go up and down a lot within a year. And say this stock is going up means you're right, doesn't mean a damn thing. So don't buy often on that one. That is not a good one. Avoid long shots. These are the companies that, we have this very technical term for this called whisper stocks. Everybody familiar with whisper stocks? They're great. Somebody call you up and they'll say, hi Pierre, how's Carolyn's, how's Beth doing, how's Annie, how's Mary, have you played any golf? And then they'll say, I want to talk to you about international blivet. And the next, they'll get one of those, they'll get a shorter term in those places where they have Nordic tracks and they put them away and they don't have to make big rocks into small rocks. They just watch movies and they have Nordic tracks, but they will not get these people if they whisper into the phone. And these are always these long shots. You know, these are the stocks that are going to grow hair and make your kid have better spelling and your breath's going to improve and you won't have to iron your pants. You know, it's one of those stocks and they always do everything for you. But they're missing, they don't have any sales yet. You know, that's the missing element to the story. The story is sensational. There's no profits here, no sales yet, but my God, if this works, it's going to be the next Xerox, you know, and it's going to help Murr in space and everything. You know, it's a very, very good deal. Now, this is not a long shot. This is a no shot. You have to separate these out. I've tried 30 of these. I have never broken even on a long shot. Never. I've made 25, 30 times my money on some stocks. I never thought about Sallie Mae or MBIA or Fannie Mae or some of the banks or Stop and Shop. I'd make 20 times the money, 30 times the money. I had no idea. I thought the stocks were going north. I had no idea. You look back 10 years later, you say, my God, I made a lot of money in this thing. The ones I went into thinking I could make 4 times my money, I've never broken even. So don't do the long shot, guys. They don't work. They simply don't work. And again, if a stock's 3 and it has huge potential, write down the story, take the stock symbol. If it's going to 300, it's okay to buy it at 15. Check in later. Check a year later. See if it's still listed. See if you still get a quote on it. See if they still have earnings yet. But if it's going, write the story down. Some of these work. I haven't heard yet, but maybe they will work. But it's worth tuning in 6 months later. Today, I think they make sense. I think they make a lot of sense for investors. And I frankly think it's a tragedy in America that the small investor has been convinced by the media, the print media, the radio, the television media, that they don't have a chance. The big institutions with all their computers and all their degrees and all their money have all the edges, and it just isn't true at all. And when they're convinced, when this happens, when this occurs, people act accordingly. When they believe it, they buy stocks for a week, and they buy options, and they buy the Chile fund this week, and next week it's the Argentina fund, and they get results proportionate to that kind of investing. And that's very bothersome. I think the public can do extremely well in the stock market on their own. I think the fact that institutions dominate the market today is a positive for small investors. These institutions push stocks on usual lows, they push them on usual highs. For someone that can sit back and have their own opinion and know something about an industry, this is a positive. The single most important thing to me in the stock market for anyone is to know what you own. I'm amazed how many people own stocks. They would not be able to tell you why they own it. They couldn't say in a minute or less why they own it. Actually, if you really press them down, they'd say, the reason I own this is the sucker's going up. I mean, that's the only reason. That's the only reason they own it. And if you can't explain, I'm serious, you can't explain to a 10-year-old in 2 minutes or less why you own a stock, you shouldn't own it. And that's true, I think, about 80% of people that own stocks. And this is the kind of stock people like to own. This is the kind of company people adore owning. This is a relatively simple company. They make a very narrow, easy to understand product. They make a 1 megabit SRAM, CMOS, bipolar risk, floating point, data I/O array processor with an optimizing compiler, a 16 dual port memory, a double diffused metal oxide semiconductor monolithic logic chip with a plasma matrix vacuum fluorescent display. It has a 16-bit dual memory. It has a Unix operating system, 4 Whetstone megaflop polysilicon emitter, a high bandwidth, that's very important, 6 gigahertz, double metallization communication protocol, an asynchronous backward compatibility, peripheral bus architecture, 4-wave interleave memory, a token ring interchange backplane, and it does it in 15 nanoseconds of capability. Now, if you own a piece of crap like that, you will never make money. Never. Somebody will come along with more whetstones or less whetstones or a bigger megaflop or a smaller megaflop. You won't have the foggiest idea what's happened. And people buy this junk all the time. I made money in Dunkin' Donuts. I can understand it. When there was recessions, I didn't have to worry about what was happening. I could go there and people were still there. I didn't have to worry about low-priced Korean imports. I mean, I just didn't have, you know, I can understand it. And you laugh. I made 10 or 15 times my money in Dunkin' Donuts. Those are the kind of stocks I can understand. If you don't understand it, it doesn't work. This is the single biggest principle. And it bothers me that people are very careful with their money. The public, when they buy a refrigerator, they get a Consumer Reports, they buy a microwave oven, they do that. They ask people what's the best kind of radar range, or what kind of car to buy. They do research on apartments. When they go on a trip to Wyoming, they get the Mobile Travel Guide, or California. When they go to Europe, they get the Michelin Travel Guide. People will hear a tip on a bus on some stock, and they'll put half their life savings in it before sunset, and they wonder why they lose money in the stock market. I'm trying to convince people there is a method. There are reasons for stocks that go up. Coca-Cola, this is very magic. It's a very magic number. Easy to remember. Coca-Cola is earning 30 times per share what they did 32 years ago. The stock has gone up 30-fold. Bethlehem Steel is earning less than they did 30 years ago. The stock is half its price of 30 years ago. Stocks are not lottery tickets. There's a company behind every stock. If a company does well, the stock does well. It's not that complicated. People get too carried away. And first of all, they try and predict the stock market. That is a total waste of time. No one can predict the stock market. They try to predict interest rates. I mean, if anybody would predict interest rates right 3 times in a row, they'd be a billionaire. Considering there's not that many billionaires on the planet, it's very, I had logic, so I had a syllogism and studied these when I was at Boston College. There can't be that many people who can predict interest rates because there'd be lots of billionaires. And no one can predict the economy. I had a lot of people in this room were around in 1981 and 82 when we had a 20% prime rate with double-digit inflation, double-digit unemployment. I don't remember anybody telling me in 1981 about it. I didn't read, I studied all this stuff. I don't remember anybody telling me we're going to have the worst recession since the Depression. So what I'm trying to tell you, it would be very useful to know what the stock market is going to do. It would be terrific to know that the Dow Jones average a year from now would be X, that we're going to have a full-scale recession, or interest rates are going to be 12%. That's useful stuff. You never know it, though. You just don't get to learn it. So I've always said, if you spend 14 minutes a year on economics, you've wasted 12 minutes. And I really believe that. Now, I have to be fair. I'm talking about economics in the broad scale, predicting the downturn for next year, or the upturn, or M1 and M2, 3B, and all these M's. I'm talking about economics. To me, is when you talk about scrap prices. When I own auto stocks, I want to know what's happening to used car prices. When used car prices are going up, it's a very good indicator. When I own hotel stocks, I want to know what hotel occupancy is about. When I own chemical stocks, I want to know what's happening to the price of ethylene. These are facts. If aluminum inventories go down 5 straight months, that's relevant. I can deal with that. Home affordability, I want to know about when I own Fannie Mae, or I own a housing stock. These are facts. They're economic facts, and there's economic predictions. And economic predictions are a total waste. But you should study history, and history is the important thing you learn from. What you learn from history is the market goes down. It goes down a lot. The math is simple. There's been 93 years a century. This is easy to do. The market's had 50 declines of 10% or more. So 50 declines in 93 years. About once every 2 years, the market falls 10%. We call that a correction. That means, that's a euphemism for losing a lot of money rapidly. But we call it a correction. And so 50 declines in 93 years, about once every 2 years, the market falls 10%. Of those 50 declines, 15 have been 25% or more. That's known as a bear market. We've had 15 declines in 93 years. So every 6 years, the market's going to have a 25% decline. That's all you need to know. You need to know the market's going to go down sometime. If you're not ready for that, you shouldn't own stocks. And it's good when it happens. If you like a stock at 14 and it goes to 6, that's great. You understand the company, you look at the balance sheet, and they're doing fine, and you're hoping to get to 22 with it. 14 to 22 is terrific. 6 to 22 is exceptional. So you take advantage of these declines. They're going to happen. No one knows when they're going to happen. It would be people tell you about it after the fact that they predicted it, but they predicted it 53 times. And so you can take advantage of the volatility in the market if you understand what you own. Another key element is that you have plenty of time. People are in an unbelievable rush to buy a stock. I'll give you an example of a well-known company. Walmart went public in October of 1970. 1970 went public.
Already had a great record. It had 15 years performance, great balance sheet. You could have waited 10 years saying you're a very conservative investor, you're not sure this Walmart can make it. You want to check, you see them operate in small towns, you're afraid they can only make it in 7 or 8 states, you want to wait till they go to more states. You keep waiting. You could have bought Walmart 10 years after they went public and made 35 times your money. If you bought it when they went public, you would have made 500 times your money, but you could have waited 10 years after Walmart went public and made over 30 times your money. You could have waited 3 years after Microsoft went public and made 10 times your money. Now, if you knew something about software, I know nothing about software. If you knew something about software, you would have said, these guys have it. I don't care who's going to win, Compaq, IBM. I don't know who's going to win Japanese computers. I know Microsoft, MS-DOS is the right thing. You could have bought Microsoft. Again, I'm repeating myself, stocks are not a lottery ticket. There's a company behind every stock. And you can just watch it. You have plenty of time. People are in an amazing rush to purchase a security. They're out of breath when they call up. You don't need to do this. You need an edge to make money, too. People have incredible edges, and they throw them away. I'll give you a quick example of SmithKline. This is a stock that had Tagamet. Now, you didn't have to buy SmithKline when Tagamet was doing clinical trials. You didn't have to buy SmithKline when Tagamet was talked about in the New England Journal of Medicine or the British version, Lancet. You could have bought SmithKline when Tagamet first came out, a year after it came out. Let's say your spouse, your mother, your father, you were a nurse, you were a druggist, you're writing all these prescriptions. Tagamet was doing an amazing job of curing ulcers, and it was a wonderful pill for the company because if you just stopped taking it, the ulcer came back. See, it would have been a crummy product if you took it for $1 and it went away, but it was a great product for the company. But you could have bought it 2 years after the product was on the market and made 5 or 6 times your money. I mean, all the druggists, all the nurses, all the people, millions of people saw this product. And they're out buying oil companies, or drilling rigs, It happens. And then 3 years later or 4 years later, Glaxo, even a bigger company, it's a huge company, a British company, brought out Zantac, which was a better, at that time, an improved product. And you could have seen that take market share, do well. You could have bought Glaxo and triple your money. So you only need a few stocks in your lifetime. They're in your industry. I think of people, if you'd worked in the auto industry, let's say you're an auto dealer the last 10 years. You would have seen Chrysler come up with a minivan. You've seen, if you're a Buick dealer, a Toyota dealer, Honda dealer, you would have seen the Chrysler dealership packed with people. You could have made 10 times your money on Chrysler a year after the minivan came out. Ford introduced the Taurus Sable, the most successful line of cars in the last 20 years. Ford went up 7-fold on the Taurus Sable. So if you're a car dealer, you only need to buy a few stocks every decade. When your lifetime's over, you don't need a lot of 5-baggers to make a lot of money starting with $10,000 or $5,000. So in your own industry, you're going to see a lot of stocks, and that's what bothers me. There are good stocks out there looking for you, and people just aren't listening, and they're just not watching it. And they have incredible edges. People have big edges over me. They work in the aluminum industry. I see aluminum industries coming down, inventories coming down 6 straight months. They see demand improving. In America today, it's hard to get an EPA permit for a bowling alley, never mind an aluminum smelter. So when aluminum gets tight, you just can't build 7 aluminum smelters. So when you see this coming, you can say, wait a second, I can make some money. When an industry goes from terrible to mediocre, the stock goes north. When it goes from mediocre to good, the stock goes north. And it goes from good to terrific, the stock goes north. There's lots of ways to make money in your own industry. You can be a supplier in the industry, you can be a customer. This thing happens in the paper industry, it happens in the steel industry. It doesn't happen every week, but if you're in some field, you'll see a turn, you'll see something in the publishing industry. These things come along, and it's just mind-boggling, people throw it away.